What is going on, everybody? It is Gage and Brock with another Tiefling Talks podcast.
Hope you guys have had a good Father's Day and a good week.
Yeah, a bunch of fun stuff. You may have noticed that this one will actually come after the next one that we upload when we come back. But uh, I recently had some issues arise, and my plate kind of got a little overloaded, so I wasn't able to be on top of things. And honestly, I think I, for the first time, experienced what burnout was. I'm not 100% sure, but needless to say, I got to the point where if I wasn't working on D&D stuff, I was sleeping. Um, it was so bad to the point where, I couldn't even go out and get normal groceries and stuff. But it's almost like it was like a week-long thing, and then my mind just snapped, and it's like, all right, we're back to hyperfixating on D&D.
Yeah, that's not good, man. Like I definitely understand having to take time, to space it out more evenly than that, instead of just like kind of shutting down for a whole week, maybe. I don't know, a day or two.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I work really hard for 4 days out of the week, and then 3 days I get to more or less just kind of relax, have fun. One of the games I run on those 3 days is on a Thursday, and they're really cool, really chill, so they totally understand having a nice, relaxing game. So, it's cool there. So, pretty much I have 3 days off. Um, but, I wanted to push myself a little bit before, and, so I wound up, besides the Friday game we play in, I wound up signing up for a Wednesday game. And I don't know if it was just kind of my overthinking type of brain, but I got to the point where I just feel like I wasn't vibing well enough with the group. And it kind of, I don't know, it just sucked because it kind of like made me feel like an outcast. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to hinder or taint my love for D&D. So I'm gonna drop out while I still have a very positive outlook of D&D, and I don't want to kind of keep pushing myself to play these games, especially if I know it's going to just make me dread showing up to them, kind of give me anxiety every time I know the game day is coming up and stuff like that. So I did what was best for both my mental health and for my emotions, and kind of just dropped that campaign as well. Um, we could talk a little bit about some of the things that I guess I pick up on, but may be passed through as things that don't really get noticed, or nobody was like intentionally trying to be mean towards me or anything like that. But so in this campaign, I tried to originally play a pacifist healer, who just does massive healing for the group. I was gonna do a three subclass type of class. I was gonna go, um, I did go cleric first, and then 3 levels into druid, and then I was eventually gonna go into sorcerer for the sorcerer points. So that way I can get the twin spells, for healing. So when I cast like a healing word or something like that, I can target another creature with it. Um, However, uh, there were some complications that came up, and basically the DM himself told me, yeah, I don't think that the pacifist healer thing's gonna work out in this campaign. It's totally cool if you want to change stuff. I'm totally cool with you changing things around, but I just don't think your playstyle is gonna work out in combat. And I'm like, okay, well that's kind of a bummer to be told that right off the bat. But it's cool. He was really cool about it. He told me up front, so that was really nice of him. Let me change my stuff around, and so I optimized my class differently to be a lot of damage instead, because I can take any class and optimize it to the best of its ability. And so with Tasha's, you can get a companion with wild shape called a wild companion, and I went that route. I also went Starry form and Forge cleric. So then it gave me a +1 to my armor. So my armor was now a 19, instead of an 18. And then I was able to use my Starry form and also my other wild shape to create the wild companion. Wild companion would give me advantage on my um, melee attacks, and So then after doing all that, I would also be able to bonus action cast Flame Sword and be able to use that to attack with, get advantage from my thing, and start dealing damage with the Starry form, so on and so forth, have multiple attacks, kind of all of that stuff. And at first it was okay because I just debuted this character that's dealing all this damage now, and um, the first thing that happened to me was I went in and I dealt like 30 points of damage to this guy round one, right? He had to have had like 2 to 3 HP left. And so our frontline tank, instead of coming up and like attacking the main bad guy, the main boss bad guy, while I was trying to take out the underlings to, give us better action economy, he goes up and he just wastes his attack on kill stealing my kill, which was like literally 3 HP away, and takes it. And then he like role plays into it, like, yeah, I just did that to that guy, and I'll do the rest of that to all of you. And everybody at the table was like, dude, I mean, you just took his kill. Not only that, but you also just are like claiming like you did all the work for it. And so, a lot of people kind of were on the fence about that. I was being a nice guy. Just I was like, yeah, it is what it is. We're all playing together. We're all helping each other out. It is what it is. And we moved on past that. And every time I would try to like make a comment or something to the frontline tank, he would just kind of stonewall me and not like talk to me at all, or kind of anything like that. The only words he uttered to me is, "You know what? I've got this. You should probably step back." And I'm like, "Okay, dude, what the hell?"
Yeah, that seems like a really unfriendly player, honestly.
And it could seem a little biased just because it's my side of the story and everything. And I totally get that, totally understand. But I don't know. I'm not the type of person that comes in with a character that tries to steal a spotlight. That's why I came in with a pacifist healer, because I wanted everybody else to do the damage, be tanking, get the crits, have all that fun stuff happen. And I was just going to kind of sit in the background. I'd heal people, and I was totally cool with that. But the DM himself told me that that wasn't going to work out well, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't really want to do this, but if you really want me to play a class that has some involvement in combat, I'm the type of person that I'm not going to min max my character. I'm going to even him out as much as I can so that he has no negative modifiers, stuff like that. But I am going to make my class as efficient as it can be. I'm not going to sit there and go, oh, let's take this because this is kind of cool, or take this because this is cool. I'm going to be like, okay, so what can I do to get the most out of what I have? And, so that all happened, that all went down, and when all was said and done, he there were a few things that happened. So right off the bat, the DM tells us that he plays RP moments with kind of cool rule of cool. If it can kind of work, we'll have it roll, and if the dice allow it, a cool thing will happen. In combat, he plays specifically rules as written, right? So I'm sitting there and, we're doing some stuff, and I go to shoot a guy and I forget that there's someone within 5 feet of me. So that means that I have disadvantage on my ranged attack against another person 15 feet away with my archer, Starry form archer. I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll take that. Not even the next round, the tank comes up. Our frontline tank, the same guy that was giving me shit before and, just not talking to me and stuff. He comes up and he's like, I don't got any weapons, but I'm going to hit this guy and I want to cast Smite with my fists. Rules is written, you cannot do that. However, the DM was like, yeah, sure, go ahead. And I'm like, okay, man, come on. That's you literally just told me I couldn't do something because the rules is written, but you're letting him get away with the smite for fist type of deal. What's going on here? And it was just a variety of stuff like that and some other things that maybe I'm reading too much into, which could totally be true. I overanalyze stuff a lot. But for me, it kind of kept building. It was a bunch of those little things that just kept building up to the point where I'm like, yeah, there's really only one person I actually talked to within this, group of six, including myself, that, we actually RP back and forth and everything. And he wasn't even there for that session, so it really felt like I was an outcast. I'm like, every time this guy's gonna be missing, I don't want it to be solely reliant on this one guy to keep me here. I should be able to talk to the rest of the group, have fun, crack jokes and stuff. But it just really made me feel not part of the group, I guess. And so, you know, I kind of just, I was like very respectful, told him, I was like, hey man, I just don't think it's working out for me. I feel like I'm kind of maybe not button heads, but also not really getting along as well as I would hope with some of the other players. So I'm gonna jump out of the campaign. I really hope and wish you guys the best. And I left, and sometimes that's just really what you have to do. There's no there's no fixing when you feel like you're just not part of the group, or your DM can say certain things, but if it's the players themselves that feel like, even if they don't know they're doing it, um, that can make you really feel like an outcast type of deal. And so, I talked to the DM, told him the issue, and I told him, hey, it's nothing you did wrong, which there was some things that he did that could have been done handled a little bit better, I guess. But I'm not the type of person to be an ass about it. And so I just kind of bowed out, and now I'm back to just playing in the Friday games, which is totally fine with me, because that means I get to enjoy my Wednesday and Thursday in peace.
Yeah, it sounds like that. As much as it sucks to like join a campaign and be ready to commit and then have to back out, it sounds like it's probably going to be better in the long run, especially for just like keeping things stable.
Yeah, and I joined this campaign as a seat filler, being that I wasn't paying anything or anything like that. So that's why I built this class to kind of just sit in the background. I was totally happy with them. I really wanted to try them out. I couldn't wait to get my sorcerer levels and get the twin spell thing and try that out, see how that works, and kind of just mash a bunch of stuff together. But him, the frontliner, and I think there was somebody else in the group that was also kind of just never interacting with me. So it just felt like I was never like we were never in the same group for some reason. It always felt like we were two different, way different people. And so I was just like, hey, I'm not gonna sit here and do it to myself and leave a bad taste of D&D in my mouth. I don't I know what signs, I guess, to look for early on, because I've been a DM for so long, to allow me to gauge and guess and get a pretty decent, if not pretty accurate, picture of what I feel like the future of this is going to look like for myself. And so, I can make judgment calls on that. So that way I can still keep D&D a very fun and fond memory. Um, yes, you can always cover up bad memories with good ones, but those bad memories and those bad experiences still stick with you. You still, like, if you walked into a game and you experienced it the same way you remember experiencing the first time in your bad campaign, you instantly get the feeling. You're like, ooh, yikes. I don't like where this is going.
It's unfortunately it takes one bad taste to ruin even like years of good tastes. It's you remember the bad things, not the good things. So trying to avoid any of these negative circumstances, especially like when it's not just the DM, which it's good that the DM reached out, but I feel like things could have been worked around. I don't know the exact like tone that was used or something. Um, Regardless, whether it's the DM, the players, the setting, whatever doesn't mesh well, I agree. It's definitely better to remove yourself. There will always be another game, another opportunity. There won't be a second chance to avoid a bad taste, though.
Right. And, for a lot of new players, it's a very scary thing because you don't know what a bad D&D experience is until you've gone through it because you're a new player. And so, for them, it's a lot harder to kind of gauge that. But for a lot of experienced players who have that bad experience under their belt or have been DMing for a very long time, you kind of get that sense of, ooh, my spider sense is tingling. I got to get the hell out of here.
Yeah. Back
Um,
when I first started playing D&D, well, not first started, maybe this was 6 months after I started taking this game seriously. Um, my local community library had a D&D group that was running and I decided it'd be a good idea to join that, and it was not. It was 12 or 13 players and
Holy shit.
one DM who did not understand 5e. They were desperately trying. Like, you could see that they were putting in effort, but they were very confused with Pathfinder rules. Um, we got a lot of asking, no, what's your flat foot AC, not your standard AC. It was not good
Oof.
because the regular GM had just left to start training for police academy. So we're stuck. Excuse me. We're running under this GM who has only been a player in this one game and is now trying to DM for a party of 12 or 13. And I knew nobody. So
Oh
it
god.
really didn't end up working well. But we switched over to Pathfinder shortly after, and things got better. Uh, it was an amnesia campaign, so you can only go so far with Pathfinder and amnesia, trying to like take away class abilities. But I don't know. It definitely it improved seeing a DM in their natural habitat, but I still would not recommend that kind of thing, and that's really turned me off of Pathfinder, honestly, just because there is so much chaos of 13 people trying to loot the same chest and trying to figure out what all these roles would take when the party started fighting each other. And
Yeah.
then there were two gunslingers,
Oh
two
god.
brothers that showed up like maybe 2 weeks after we switched to Pathfinder, and they fucking knew Pathfinder. Holy shit. Like we were all out here like kind of just barely making it through the game. And then there's these two I think it was like a Goliath and a Halfling, or like the Pathfinder equivalents of those. The Goliath had full plate armor. He was a walking fucking tank with a giant blunderbuss. And then the Halfling had two little pistols and would sit on his shoulder. And fuck.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so the Goliath had like 27, 28 AC or something, and just never got hit. And the Halfling would take advantage of cover, hiding like in various places of this guy's armor,
That's
and they just
insane.
wiped every fucking encounter. It was so much fun to watch, but I felt so bad because you could watch the DM just like, oh my god, it's your turn. What are you gonna do?
Right.
Because
Mm.
I mean, they knew the game better than she did.
Right. And that's something that I got a reality check on when I was in this game with the rules as written, because I always play with rule cool. You know, you guys pitch me something. If I think it's cool enough, I'll tell you to roll a die, and if it works out well, beats the DC I have in my head, then by all means you can do it. But with rules as written, it's kind of changed pretty much the perspective of everything for me, because um, I found out that um, so if you have a racial feature that lets you use, like, say, Misty Step, for example, to cast with, I allow you to use Misty Step as the bonus action after you used a leveled spell. However, you're not supposed to be able to do that, regardless of what the spell is, or if it's a racial feature or a class feature. You're only supposed to be able to cast one leveled spell per turn.
Right.
Um, and like I said, I previously did not know that. Like I said, I let my players use Misty Step. If it's a racial feature, why not? You get it as a race. I figure it's just something innately that you get to do. Um, but regardless, I also found out that so the 5 foot disadvantage for ranged attacks is not for just shooting something within 5 feet of you. It's when an enemy is within 5 feet of you. Any ranged attack you make is at disadvantage.
Interesting. Okay, so it's like applying pressure on somebody while they're making the shot, not like, oh shit, he's close, I can't get the barrel or whatever,
Right.
the bow and arrow to act right.
Because that's what I did with Starry form. I went up and I went into melee range, action, use my shillelagh to hit, and then use my Starry form to shoot an arrow. But even though I was targeting somebody, like 20 feet away, I had disadvantage still because somebody was within 5 feet of me. I was like, oh, well, that changes a lot of things. I did not know that. I thought it was just when I'm trying to attack somebody within 5 feet.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of people probably don't know a lot of these things, and it's partly the DM's job to like refresh people of these things, but you can't really be like, wait, what are you trying to do? Like assume that people like assume the worst, assume they're trying to slip one by you. You just gotta accept that people just don't know. They forget and just be like, hey, just a reminder, you can't do that. That's against the rules or shit like that.
Right. And that's what I try to do with my players all the time is, when I see them doing something, I'll be like, hey, don't forget, you can add your sneak attack damage because somebody's within 5 feet. One of your allies is within 5 feet of the enemy you just attacked. So even though you don't have advantage, your ally does give you sneak. And, I'll remind people of that. I'll remind people of, hey, just a reminder, I know you're new, but if you move outside of 5 feet of this enemy, he will get an opportunity attack. And I kind of try and do stuff like that. But like I said, I've always played with uh, rule of cool kind of deal. In combat, it's a little bit more serious, and there's a lot more to it. But for the most part, it's when you're trying to do something, as long as I see it as a viable reason and it's not breaking the game, I don't really have an issue with it. It's only when you get to the point where you're like, okay, well, I'm gonna cast. Um, this, and then for a bonus action, I'm gonna cast, whatever else, a second fireball or something. Not really, but then I'm like, okay, well, you can't do that. That's a
Yeah.
little too much, Um, but I for me personally, when it comes to it, what's the worst Misty Step's gonna do? You're gonna do a touch spell and then get out of the enemy's range. Okay, what's so bad about that? Because of the fact that there are hundreds of other classes with hundreds of other ways of getting into range of somebody and getting out. Rogues can get in, attack, use a bonus action, get out. Um, Fighters can use an action surge and use their action surge to disengage or whatever. So there's a multitude of ways to kind of make that work. So I don't see an issue with stuff like that. It's just when you try to actually break the game with trying to bend the rules, then we have an issue. Um, but regardless, yeah, I mean, it's really up to the DM to, yes, know the stuff, obviously, first and foremost. However, there is just so much particular wording on so much content for 5e now. I would never go into a game expecting a DM to know every book that has come out with every wording and everything else. Um, and I'm not going to expect a DM to be able to be like, oh, hold on, let me go look it up and everything like that. If they want to, cool. If not, I'm totally cool with the DM being like, okay, for this turn or this session, we'll go ahead and say yes, but we'll retcon it later if it's something different, which is what I do. I play with rules as interpreted. So with Foundry, it allows me to open character sheets, look at your feats, look at what you guys got, and read the description real quick, and then I'll make a judgment call later on. I'll get on Google, type it in, see what forums say, see what other DMs say, see what rules is written kind of plays out, and then I'll adjust it as we go. But um, yeah, no, it was something else because apparently he had like all this knowledge about 5e, but nothing about Tasha's. So it kept throwing him off every time I was using from something Tasha's, or I would remind our rogue, hey, you are 4th level. At 3rd level, you get the steady aim feature. You can use that. While it is optional, it is still there for you to use. And he was like, "Oh, okay, then yeah, I'm gonna start using that." And the DM was like, "What? What's this? I haven't." I'm like, "Hey, if you don't want it in your game, that's totally cool. I'll link you the steady aim thing and everything, and you can give a judgment call. But I'm just trying to help out our rogue that's just sitting there. He spent 3 turns in the same spot." And I'm like, all right, man, come on. Like, if you're not gonna move, then I really want you to have this ability because it's perfect for the instance where you're just standing there shooting arrows turn after turn.
Yeah, if you're not gonna move, you may as well at least get the advantage from,
Right.
standing still, not positioning, not kiting.
Right, and the addition of your sneak attack damage, which is a big thing for rogues with
Right.
that advantage. And that was the other thing that threw him for a loop is when I had the Wild Companion come out, which was part of Tasha's, and the Flame Blade, which is a spell from Tasha's. Um, he was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, what's all this?" And I explained it to him. He's like, yeah, all right." And I'm like, "All right, cool. Let's get into it." And that's when I dealt the damage and stuff like that. Um, and I asked him beforehand too. When I was changing my classes, I made sure he knew exactly what I was choosing and why I was choosing it. I'm like, hey, I am going to be getting a companion. I'm going to do Starry Form, and I would like to do Forge Cleric. Is all that cool? And he's like, yeah, sure, not an issue. And another thing came up which made me really realize something going on because like I said, could be reading into it too much, but so the DM, is got the big bad going, and the big bad, even though our frontline tank is literally adjacent to it, so also 5 feet away, was taking both of his attacks on me consistently, and I'm like, okay, well, whatever, fine, I can heal, I can deal with it, I'm good, not an issue. I'll just keep sitting here being a caster, tanking everything, while our frontline tank deals with these little minions over here. Not like whatever. Um, and so I kept just tanking some damage, I'd heal, and then I'd attack. Tanking some damage, heal, and then I'd attack. And I was just going after this big bad the whole time. And there was a moment where the DM rolled an 18, which was my previous AC, right? And but because of Forge Cleric allows me to add a +1 to my armor, creating a 19. And so when he hit that 18, he's like, does an 18 hit? And I'm like, no. And he's like, uh, are you sure? And I hear some papers flipping, and I'm like, yeah, I'm at a 19 with Forge Cleric. And he looks at my character sheet and is like, oh, okay. And then the next attack he rolls, it's a 22. And I'm like,
Yeah.
interesting, interesting how that worked, especially because he already knew that I was low on health from taking an arrow from another enemy or whatever. I'm like, huh, okay, I'll take that damage. And I took the damage, and he's like 22 points of damage, and I'm like, okay. And we sat there for probably about 10 seconds of silence, and he's like, are you still up? And I'm like, yep, still up. And it was that moment for me where it's like, okay, so he did literally two things in my mind anyway. Being a DM, yes, you fudge dice. It happens. You fudge dice to kind of make the encounters more enticing, to allow the combat to actually be a lot more challenging, stuff like that. I totally understand that. But when he was saying that, not only did it lead to me thinking, all right, he fudged the dice thinking an 18 would hit, so it was below an 18, got mad, or not mad, but wanted a hit to land on me, so he did the 22. Totally cool, totally fine with that. Took the damage. um but the moment he said, are you still up, after I didn't say anything, I was like, oh, yeah. And that's when I realized he was trying to down me. Now that's no fun. That's not cool. I get when you're trying to bring people down to low health and stuff, but leave it up to the dice at the last moments. I'm not going to fudge dice when it is rolling to put you into death saves. I'm literally leaving that up to dice. That is up to chance. I may skim a little off the top at the beginning of combat, but after that, it is up to the dice whether they take you out or not. I just want to kind of, you know, give you a paper cut to get things kicked off. And so kind of hearing him say that, it put me in a mindset of, okay, well, why am I being targeted? What's going on here? What's happening? It's not only the frontline fighter who's not tanking the big bad guy who supposedly has a higher AC than me, and he was gloating about that. But also is just sitting here killing off minions instead, and I'm like, dude, this party's dynamics are either really fucked up or people just don't like me.
Yeah, I don't know. That's one of the reasons that I really prefer DMs rolling out in the open. Like, I understand that fudging dice could be part of the game, but and for like maybe big boss encounters, I could see having dice hidden, but for like generic stuff, like, okay, make an opposed deception roll to, I'm gonna roll insight or something. it just doesn't like unless it's an essential NPC. I don't really see a reason. I feel like the game's more fun just rolling with what the dice decide and then having to come up with it on the spot. I feel like that's at least more towards what our Friday game would do. And I feel like I really enjoy the dynamic our Friday game has, where if the dice decree it, then we just have to make it work.
Right.
And it's truly left up to chance. There's no, except for a little bit of plot armor, there's no like God stepping in and saying, "Oh nope, he's not ready to die yet."
Right, and that's what I'm trying to do now with my games is like if it's a very it's a opposing skill check roll or something like that, I'm always going to try and like I'll try and show you guys what they rolled when they fail or when they succeed, stuff like that. Or they need to make a saving throw, I try to show you guys those rolls. The only time that I try to hide attack rolls is when I get like 5 crits in a row, which has happened in the Sunday game, and um, I will only show you guys one of those crits because yes, as much as I want to leave it up to dice, I don't trust digital dice enough to actually have that viable chance of getting that because there's a lot more variety in rolling a physical dice, a lot more chance, a lot more variables that come into play. The size of your hand, whether your hand's sweaty or not, all of that like adds into the effect of that dice roll being truly random for your person. However, in with digital dice, there's only so much the algorithm can allow. It is an algorithm. It is programmed by somebody else to do that. The random chance, yes, it can still happen, but it is an algorithm to some extent.
And I mean that yeah, we don't have a way to really simulate true randomness. It's always going to be based on a formula. There's even a guy who can claimed at least that he could roll a six-sided die and roll it to what he wanted to. Of course, with a d20, that's not going to happen, and nobody's really trying to do that. But there's always going to be some element of something happening. And since we're playing over the internet, short of a webcam dedicated to your dice tray, there's not another good way to show rolls. So it's a lesser of the evils. Do you hide the rolls and have suspicion like you were describing? Or do you show all the rolls and just have to essentially waste a webcam and like clutter the screen?
Yeah, I mean, I think a good spot is a mix of both. A little bit of mystery of, the DM knows what's going on, the players don't, but also those solid moments when a player's in disbelief of, did I really just fail that, or did I really just, he really just succeed that deck save or whatever? And then you show it and you're like, oh shit, okay. And those are the moments that yes, you revalidate that you are being truthful, that you aren't trying to lie about it. I want my players to succeed, so when an enemy succeeds, it's not like I'm trying to fudge them to succeed. I want them to fail. I want you guys to win. I want you guys to have an awesome encounter. But at the same time, I don't want to show everything because yes, I don't want my luck with dice to create a negative experience for my players type of deal. Because yes, I do eventually, and sometimes, as we've had in one of my campaign, in the Sunday campaign where I rolled what 8 natural 1s one night.
Yeah.
um it does happen, but more often than not I am hitting those natural 20s, and that's just something that for whatever reason that's the way Foundry is. And I think I've averaged it out to about 5 crits every session I host from the bad guys. And to me that is just too unfair because there are some people that just have no luck. I've seen how Foundry treats some dice rolls for other players, and they literally never get into a double digit on a d20. And so while there is a set type of deal to everything. I think that a little bit of mystery, a little bit of the DM kind of working his behind the scene magic to make the situation a lot more enjoyable and saying, "Oh, yep, bad guy fails to save," even though the bad guy got a nat 20. He fails and you guys banish him to another realm, and the party's like, "Yeah, awesome, great," because everybody was down to a single digit of health. So that creates those moments of tension while still allowing a success to have. Whereas, wiping a party every other session gets old real quick, and a lot of players don't want to stick around for it, especially people who are playing or paying to play.
That I could definitely see. I think that's just the idea of wiping the party every session just requires a different type of group. Somebody who's ready for that nitty gritty you plan or you die type game. Because I mean, in the end, D&D characters, while you do grow attached to them, if it's a combat based session, then they do become expendable to at least some degree. It just it attracts a different kind of person to want a game where you have to focus on preserving your characters as they are now a resource instead of like a self insert.
Right. And that's why me and you, although have taken a break on it, are working on a Dark Souls esque Dungeons and Dragons, where it is literally down in the dirt, nitty gritty. You are fighting for your life type of deal. Health potions hard to come by, finding rations hard to come by, getting money hard to come by. It is a grim and dark world. And so bringing players into that, that's the expectation I would set for somebody who is ready to have a fighting character, combat character that, if it dies, it dies. So what? I'll make a new one, you know. Um, but for the games I'm running now, it's a lot of new people that are very fresh to D&D, and I don't want that to be a first experience. I want the first experience of a death to be an NPC, so that way they can kind of get a feel for growing attached to something and losing it. And then after that, yeah, we'll get into some more serious campaigns where we play an actual commission game, and death is always on the table. There is always a chance for death, but there's always a chance for resurrection, revivify, stuff like that. So, the world's there and it is as it's supposed to be, but for the initial modules, introducing new people, bringing groups together, it makes it a lot better when the group can all kind of play the same character, vibe really well together, figure out party dynamics, figure out where everybody likes to stand within party, as we discussed previously, party roles. Because nobody just wants to RP their character. They want to have a spot, whether it's the tank, the DPS, the healer. Everybody wants to have their designated role, and so allowing new players and old players all coming together and doing that initial setup. That's where you kind of make it a lot harder to allow a player death, but you bring in NPCs who die along the way, and it helps bond the party, this and that. And then you get to commission games, and that's where you kind of tell them, hey, so previously you guys, not going to say you had plot armor. If the dice really were rolling super shit and they wanted you to die, then your character might have died. But in this one, it is what it is. If you guys can't handle a situation, the leave and get the hell out of there button is always right there, you know. Um, and so you guys have to be smart about how you go into combat encounters. You guys can't just walk into a dungeon and expect, all five of you go separate directions and all five of you to come back alive. Um, so, for instance, you guys experienced this with the, what was that, the two giants and the three howlers,
Yep.
fire giants and stuff. I was not fudging rolls at all for that encounter. You guys got extremely lucky that you guys were not killed, and I'm still in disbelief that the dice didn't get any better on my side for trying to kill you guys. Um, because the way that your party just kind of haphazardly walked in through caution of the wind. One of the players kind of just shouted through the caves to get the attention of every possible monster within, 80 feet. It just kind of all accumulated to this moment of you guys are now fighting 2 fire giants at the same time, as well as 3 howlers, and half the party's still trying to make their way down the hole. And so,
Yeah, and I was just kind of chilling up top, you know, fucking screaming, crying, so sad. Everybody left me for like, what was it, 4 rounds, 5 rounds?
something like that. You were like incapacitated trying to make them saves. That was it, the wisdom save?
Yeah.
That was just not friendly for you.
Nope, that was
You kept getting a
very
14,
sad.
I think, right?
Yeah, and the DC was like 15 or 16, something like that.
Yeah, that was, oh god, that was an
It was brutal. I just wish somebody from the party that you weren't controlling would have stayed behind. Or if the whole party would have, not split. But whatever.
right. That's that was the judgment call. I was at the end of that session. I told you guys, I was like, hey, I don't care if you guys above the table talk about strats and stuff like that. Obviously, not talking about stat blocks and the monster blocks, but figure out what you guys can do in tandem to help each other. You guys can look at this situation. I'll give you the week to look over this situation and figure out, oh shit, we really need to get to Brock and his character to get him ready and fit for combat, so that way he can sit in the back and start blasting things with a lot of damage. And so I laid it on you guys. I'm like, hey, strategize. Otherwise, yeah, this encounter could very much just kill you all. Luckily enough, the dice were not having it. They did not want you to die for whatever reason. So you guys lived through that. So, kudos to your guys' luck on that. However, I'm not pulling any more punches. So when you guys are going to get slapped around, you guys are going to get slapped around, especially in this next encounter. Although we skipped this next Sunday when you guys come back and you guys are dealing with, I believe it's Loth and the Drow.
Yeah, I hope she slaps me around.
Regardless, that's it's a very deadly encounter, and one of the characters, Austin, is going in really haphazardly, like, oh, it's not this, it's that, and wiffle ball bat and everything else. And I'm like, dude, you don't understand. You are not only in her domain, so not only does she get layer actions and legendary actions, but you guys have already got your ass handed to you by some fire giants. This person's way stronger than both those fire giants combined.
Oh yeah.
So, sitting there, I tried to lay it on really thick because it needed to be, and I tried to really push the power difference that, hey, you guys want to run? You guys can run. You guys want to be diplomatic? You guys can be diplomatic. You guys want to try and fight it? By all means, I hope to God the dice rolls are on your side. If not, it will probably look like a TPK if I get all the crits that I would normally get in a normal session.
I wanted to be diplomatic. I wanted to be diplomatic so bad.
I noticed most of the party was like, maybe this is, and Austin just kept being, well, because I'm a paladin and stealing kids and this and that. I'm like, okay, how much use are you going to be to those kids if you are dead? Not very, I don't
Probably
think.
probably more use than he is in this social encounter right now.
Yeah, either way, it's just ridiculous because they're. I'm not gonna say that any of my players are hard headed, but they are very much like, once they set their mind to something, that it is that they want to accomplish. And if the dice rolls work for that, fine. But if the dice rolls tell you no once, that is your warning. When the dice rolls tell you no a second time, they are no longer warning you. And when that third dice roll comes in and it's not good, it is going to kill you.
Yeah, that is a fact that I really hope happens, or not like happens, but like actually gets through to people. Because fucking hell, like come on.
Right. I mean, it's a dice game. You are playing a mathematical dice game. So if you cannot accept that what the dice are telling you, you need to rethink what game you're playing because it is a dice game. So if the dice are like, "Hey, you failed that. You failed that. Yeah, we'll let you pass on that. You're going to fail that. fail that, you're looking at 4 fails out of 5. That is not good. Do not keep trying the same thing. It was
You
funny.
know,
I go ahead.
no go.
I was what game was I running? There was a game I was running. I'm trying to remember, but they did the meta game thing where one person searched something, they didn't find anything because of a low dice roll. And so, somebody else comes over and searches it and, new dice roll, right? And I'm like, "Okay." Second person came over, searched it, didn't find anything. Third person came over, searched it, still couldn't roll high enough, didn't find
Yeah.
anything. Fourth person came over to search it. I'm like, "All right, if you search this and you fail, there will be consequences because this is the fourth time your party has done this. I'm very lenient on things, but this is the fourth fucking time. So if you're ready to make that check, go ahead." And they were all like, I think level 2 at this point. They made the search, couldn't find anything, and the chest turned into a mimic.
Yeah.
And they had to fight a mimic. They nearly two of them went unconscious fighting this mimic. And I was like, "Hey, I am totally cool with one person trying to go through things and another person coming over to double check their work or whatever. But when you guys metagame in this way, there will always be consequences because the dice themselves are telling you, hey, your group is not finding anything. Move on." And so at the fourth time of the dice game saying, "Stop it," you got to appease the dice gods.
Yeah, lesson learned. Start fucking mimics instead of trying to investigate them. It
And
turns out better 100% of the time.
that's the thing is when when you're with a party or when you're with a group of friends and you guys are searching things and going through things, unless you're stuck in like an escape room, um, when somebody looks through something, they're like, "Ah, nothing over here." You don't go over there and look through it. You just move on as a group. Any video game you play, when you're like, "Oh, yeah, there's no loot over here," everybody else just moves on. So why is it any different because you know of a role? You're metagaming a little bit and being like, "Oh, okay, well, I know he rolled low, which means that there's probably something in there. We just got to roll high enough to get it." And I'm like, I don't know about that, Chief. That's kind of above the board talk. That's like when somebody gets a crit, right? You don't know that you got a crit. What you know is that you dealt some extra damage or you hit them in a weak spot. And so you had some extra oomph to your damage. What that it's not like our characters are in this world going, yeah, let's watch that big overlord over there roll that d20. I've got my trusty +4 here on my left shoulder plate. uh oh, yeah, that's a 13 plus the 4 I have. 17. Yeah, I am hitting this guy. That's not how this works.
Yeah, as much as I wish it was how it works, it is definitely not. But
That's why I'm building the
here's
game with that's how that works. That's why I'm
right.
doing that isekai thing.
Here's another thought that's still pertinent to this is when you have like a DMPC or just like an essential NPC or something is lying to the party about something, and a party member rolls insight. If they roll low, does that mean that they are inaccurate and are guessing, or does that mean that they are specifically wrong about their interpretation?
I will always make it seem like if a DNPC is lying and somebody wants to insight check and they roll really low, what happens is they think that he's telling the truth. That they believe to him to be an honest, upstanding person. However, every person that rolls insight after that has to roll a higher insight than whatever DC I had before. So I will add some more to that DC to make it harder because, you know, people are always watching people make those low rolls and they're like, "Oh, I'll assist or I'll do the same." Sure. However, it's going to be harder for the next person and then the next person and then the next person until I get to the point where, a random lightning bolt strikes the fifth person for trying.
That would be pretty funny. Have you ever run into scenarios where that's led to metagaming though? Somebody seeing that it was a low roll and receiving the answer in a negative fashion, like you assume that since the roll was low, it's the opposite of what you received as an answer, and then people acting upon it the way that they feel instead of the way that was interpreted.
So you're saying like if one of my DMPCs lied to a character and that character got a low roll and I told that character, "Hey, you believe he's being honest," then that character starts treating him like he's a liar and trying to
Exactly. Yeah.
circumnavigate. So when I see stuff like that, that is when um, I start pulling strings for the DNPC to, really put on this very much, I'm a nice guy, everybody loves me, this and that. And I will make it so that way every time the party tries to expose him, it blows up in their face because of the fact that they shouldn't know that to begin with. So they shouldn't be trying that in the first place. You are essentially taking outside player knowledge, which it happens sometimes, and I will say that I will actually tell my players, hey, that is a little bit metagamey. I would say that you don't know that, or you wouldn't take this line of thought. And then most of the time, my players always kind of take that hint and they're like, okay, and they'll go back to doing whatever their character was doing. I haven't run into a situation where they tried to kind of go against what I've told them that their player would be thinking or their character would be thinking. And if I did, like I said, I pull strings. I would kind of pull out all the woodworks to really hinder their chances of finding any actual evidence against this guy, where they could have normally done so had they stumbled upon it or had they found some other clue that led them to believe it. Sure, by 100 means, unhindered path, take it. But once you start doing something where you know you have received the wrong answer and you just go against that anyway, you're basically telling me that you're not playing as your character anymore. You're playing as a player with your mindset in that character. So now I'm going to play as a DM in the mind of that DNPC.
Yeah, I feel like that yeah, I definitely agree that, extra steps have to be made. I feel like that the idea of you roll low, you get the opposite of the answer. I feel like that applies into a lot of things like investigation. You roll low, you don't find anything, versus you roll low, you find like a fucking rock or something, or you roll low and you can still accidentally stumble upon it, or like an insight check, you roll low, you may stumble upon the right answer, but it would just be a guess at that point. It wouldn't be certain, or just an I don't know, because
Eh, go ahead.
I feel like any solid answer that ties to a low roll just automatically insinuates like, hey, this is wrong. Okay, we got the answer we're looking for. And
So what you're saying is to just mitigate it all together by not giving a wrong answer, but giving a very, very, very vague answer.
either a vague answer or an uncertain answer, or flip a coin behind the table. If it's like a straight black and white thing, like is he lying? Yes, no. Flip a coin, see which answer they believe. Because I mean, if
But see,
uh
that's still a yes or no answer, a right or wrong answer, and at that point, that's what that insight check was to be able to tell that player. So it's really hard to kind of find that nice balance because a lot of DMs, a lot of people wind up using certain words, and other people who obviously don't know the DM too well or other things. When I go, oh yeah, it seems like a normal stone wall. People hang on the word seems. It's not that I'm trying to insinuate anything. I'm literally just telling you, in my way of talking, it's a normal stone wall. But if I say it normally, I'm like, it's a normal stone wall. It sounds like I'm being sarcastic or kind of like well, what did you think it was, you idiot? And I don't ever want that to come across. So I use a lot of like soft words, I guess, or like I forgot what the word was for it, but basically where you use words to kind of muddy the meaning of your sentence to make it seem a lot nicer, a lot calmer, a lot um, and just calmer in general. Like you're not accusatory or um, throwing things around or trying to be like attacking anybody. I'd use a lot of words that would kind of muddle that down to just allow it to be, yeah, it seems like a wall.
Sure. So, radical thought, and I'm sure this won't lead anywhere, but what do you think about an RPG system or just like a variant rule for 5e where instead of the characters knowing what was rolled, they just like voice their modifier and all rolls are hidden and on the DM. So if you roll an investigation check or something, you don't actually know what you rolled. You just know that you wanted information and you received an answer based on a roll.
See, I like that, and that's what I liked about Foundry's blind GM rule. However, the issue is then you're eliminating so many dice from the dice game that the players actually get to roll that, a lot of times they're just sitting there clicking a button. Which, if you make the VTT fun enough for them to interact with and play around with, and they're on the map moving their token around more than that, they still got their attack rolls and stuff like that. Um, However, when it comes to those RP moments and stuff, you're still kind of eliminating. I believe when you do a blind GM roll, it also gets rid of your digital dice that rolls across the screen, so you can't see that anymore. And then there's just a moment of me giving a response, which for some groups definitely could work, and I do like the line of thought this idea has and the potential merit. But I know for a lot of people, it's having those dice, rolling those dice, as many dice as I can get in, the dice goblins, so to speak. You know.
Yeah. I think it would work better in like an in-person scenario where if I don't know, if all players could like roll towards the DM or something, or like roll and the die ends up behind a screen or something.
Could you
'Cause
imagine everyone has a dice tower that has like a long chute that just leads to the DM?
that's basically what I'm picturing is everybody rolls at a table and there's like a funnel in the middle of the table and it just rolls the die out like by the DM's feet or something.
Right. Or the DM has like a spinny chair that they can like spin around in, and they're just at the center of this round table, this donut table. And basically, he's got a full circle kind of DM screen, and people just roll into it, and it kind of comes down onto his platform where he can see it, and then he can hand the dice back and stuff. But that'd be really cool. It's a fun line of thought. I'd like to explore that more one day and see if I can get that to work on Foundry in some way, shape, or form. I'm starting to kind of um, push a lot of my players to using the blind GM roll for stealth and stuff like that, because those moments do create a lot of like fun. Like, yeah, I'm stealthing with a 3, you know,
Yeah,
and
no,
so
that's like some of the most fun shit. Cause like when a rogue rolls a nat one on stealth or something, and they see they rolled a nat one, then they can just be like, okay, maybe stealth's not the greatest idea right now.
right. I'm gonna
And it's
sit at the
even
door and
more
guard the
fun.
door.
Yeah, it's even more fun when they've got like clown shoes that go honk 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 as they're trying to fucking walk
Right, or
or something.
that's something I do with my players now. That I think Saturday morning they started rolling blind stealth checks, and I'm like, yeah, you guys make it into the town very stealthily. You guys are able to slip past a lot of the guards, and then you guys hear the clattering of pots and pans as somebody has stepped into a what do they call it?
Like a drying
Bed
rack, maybe.
a bedpan basically, um and or a chamber pot. And I'm like, and you guys look behind and you see X, Y, and Z has put his foot into a chamber pot and kicked two others over, and you guys have now been found out. Roll for initiative, and everybody's like, what the fuck, it creates those awesome moments. So I'm trying to push it more for stuff like that. I'm also gonna see about implementing a little bit more into the RP moments, calling it out like, hey, obviously not for like strength saves and stuff like that. You're gonna hit or miss that. There's no reason to hide that. However, when someone is rolling insight, I'm gonna be like, all right, go ahead and blind GM roll that for me. Whereas, if it's a general perception check the entire group can make, I'll let you guys all roll out in the open and stuff like that.
Sure. One more thought before we wrap up is Well, actually, two more. One, I think you should do death saves the same way. I feel like that would add a lot more
I've been
tension to combat.
trying, but the problem with the character sheet is it still marks it off as a pass or a failure on the character sheet itself. So the character can always look in there. However, what I've been
Oh,
trying to do is I'm trying to tell my players, hey, blind GM roll this, and you will see it on your character sheet. Do not say anything to the rest of your party. I had that happen. Same game, Saturday morning. Someone rolled a nat 1, had two death saves, failed. And there was one character that was going to come up before an enemy NPC was going to come up that was originally, even before he made the death save, going to hit him while he was in death saves. And I'm like, this dude's going to die. But that character went over, healing word him. He got up and everything. And I'm like, dude, you saved his fucking life at the end of the session.
yeah. Why not just have people roll straight d20 and blind GM roll, and then you can keep track? I mean, how many players can you really have in death saves at once?
Oh, yeah, for sure. It just, I think it's easier for them because it's like a click button or whatever. But yeah, I can probably get them on board, especially that I got that little set of individual dice you can click at the bottom of chat.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Those are actually pretty helpful.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'll look into it more and figure out a good method to kind of implement it across the board.
yeah. I think what I was getting to though is like on the topic of all these skill checks and stuff is when a player usually has to make like a charisma or an intimidation roll. I find it odd. I'm not sure how to fix this, but I find it odd that it seems like those checks are handled backwards than most other skill checks in 5e. Like you can voice what you say you're making an athletics check. Like, I would like to push this boulder out of the way. Okay, make an athletics check. I rolled a 2. Yeah, that boulder's going nowhere. I rolled an 18. Yeah, you just threw the boulder on top of the halfling. Good luck. But with charisma checks, it seems like usually you role play out the moment and then you make the charisma check, as opposed to just like stating an intention, and then once the charisma check is made, then you can role play out how it goes.
Well, I think that it also works out because then, characters can really get into the role of giving that intimidation or coming up and be like, "Hey, bartender, why don't you help us out here? Get us a little discount, we'll give you a song and dance. We'll bring in some more patrons for you. We're a famous adventuring party, and they really get into it. However, I feel like a lot of people would haphazardly give that once they saw that they had like a 2 or something on their roll. Instead, they'd be like, why don't you give us something? And it's like, okay, well, how do you work with that? I don't want the RP moment to die just because they got a low roll. But at the same time, I see what you're saying, where somebody can deliver this great performance of trying to persuade somebody and still get a low roll. Typically, how I run my games in RP moments like that is if you do something and say something that persuades them, and even I'm like, oh, shit, yeah, I mean, fuck, I would even do it if you talk to me like that, damn. And then I'll tell you roll with advantage, or I will lower the DC on my side of things to allow it to flow easier. Um, so I believe that a good performance will get you better results because it gives you a better chance to succeed. And so that's why I give you these boons or buffs to go with it. Whereas, someone who comes up and they're like, yeah, we'd like 3 rooms. All right, that'll be 30 gold. And, they're like, can we get a discount? Like, okay, roll persuasion, I guess. And I'm not going to give them anything because they literally just came right out and said it. They didn't try to do anything.
And I definitely see that, and that's the way that I ran things in the 1-2 games that I DM'd. But I feel like now that I'm like stepping back and looking at it as a player, it feels like that's judging more on the player's charisma than the character's charisma. Is it not? Because it's your perception of how the player acted that is determining a boon or a bane on the skill check, as opposed to the character, how the conversation would actually go in with their charisma. It feels like it'd be more difficult maybe for like shy players to achieve one of these boons or like lower their DC, because maybe a shy player is only able to get out like, could we get a discount please or something like that, because it takes a lot to ask for some people to speak out like that.
Yeah,
And
and you know, I personally, as a personal DM, I can't. I obviously never speak for the majority of DMs as a whole, but personally, when I see a character that does that and they step out of their comfort zone to do that, hell yeah, I'm going to lower the DC for them. Hell yeah, I'm going to give them advantage because it's they're trying to not only step out of their comfort zone, which is a huge step for someone who's shy. I know I've been there. I'm still there. You know, I have so many issues when I try to leave the house. Um, but you know, trying to do that and really bond with the party and you know stepping forward and doing that, I will never ever fault one of my players for doing that, and I will always try to help them succeed because I know that that first good moment of that RP moment will lead to many more great ones if they succeed, and so I will give them the first one. Later on down the line, yeah, if they still provide a you know subpar performance, you know half a year later, and they're barely talking or anything, yeah, I'm gonna be like, all right, well, you're just rolling normal now. But I will talk to my players and be like, hey, you know, the better performance you guys give, the more likely I'll give you advantage or lower the DC, just so you guys know. Um,
right.
just so that way, you know, it's on the table that you guys have the chance to definitely succeed and get a better chance to succeed the more effort you put into that character's role play moment. You know, if you're a combat focused person and don't care about RP at all, yeah, you ain't getting advantages from anything. However, if you are a combat focused person, no RP at all, but it's just because you're shy and you do eventually voice up at some point, and I've kind of gotten that read on your character, I will definitely, you know, assist you as much as I can for quite a while until I'm ready to be like, all right, you're talking with a group, you're a lot more talkative, you have been stepping forward so much more now, and you're almost the face of the party at this point. You got to step up your RP game. If you want tips or tricks or anything like that, I'm more than happy to work with you. You know, I'm a DM, and part of my job is being able to run with the punches and do improv at any possible moment. And so, you know, I will lay on the tips and tricks I have. Um, the biggest one is I just let my mind go blank. I kind of just run with like a conversation, like I'm kind of zoning out while running with the conversation, and it allows my head to fill with like the wording that these characters need.
I hate to think of what your head filled when you were trying to roleplay Vitra in Austin.
No, I blacked out for that. I don't remember much of that. I just remember kind of coming back to, and it was 30 minutes later in the session for some reason.
Yeah, coming back to 30 minutes later, Austin somehow not dead and still complaining about this, which is beyond any of us,
Dude,
but
yeah, are you kidding me? I gave him the companion, right? And he is like,
yeah,
um, no, I'm good. I'm like, what the fuck? We've been working on this since day one that you met her. What the fuck is going on here, man?
yeah, and he moved on and is trying to hit on the goddess of Drow, or I believe.
Yeah, Loth.
Yeah, and it's like, wait a second, you have the
That's your
infernal
monster
chastity.
high girl, okay?
Yeah, you have the infernal chastity belt on with Vitra. Like, fuck off. Leave monster girls for the rest of us.
Oh god, it's a lot of my campaigns after having that kind of week of just like not depression but just sleeping and getting like much needed sleep and stuff like that.
Yeah.
um I came back too, and for some reason all of my campaigns there have been jokes every I if I have not laughed once during a campaign, I've not had that campaign yet because you know everybody's been really on top of jokes, cracking jokes. I think that it could be the new energy, the vigorated energy I've been bringing back since I kind of dropped out of that whole slump or whatever. And it kind of pushes a lot of my players to be a lot more comedic or whatever because they're able to open up since I'm being fun and goofy and letting things roll. So you know, if that's the case, I've been having a blast. You know, I I'm at 50, 16 games now. Um, and so I feel no wear out whatsoever, and I am just having the time of my life with some of these people.
Yeah, that's awesome. And kind of tying everything back in, it seems like the shy player problem and like trying to get them to start interacting with the group, it is this sense of humor, especially with the Sunday game I'm a part of. It seems like every new character has just had one moment where one like kickoff joke that really got us comfortable. Shout out to the Canadian viewers that talked about us talking about orgies in the second episode of this, because we're going to do it again. That was the joke for our most recent player in the Sunday game, was making a joke about having a threesome with the aforementioned Austin and Vitra.
Oh yeah, it was. I think Lando also came into his own when he started like making like the yes, turn me into a drow mommy type jokes and stuff like
Oh yeah,
that.
absolutely, yeah.
And everybody's
And
cracking up, dying. I feel like everybody. Those are the moments, those breakout moments where somebody cracks a joke, makes something happen, or it's the opposite of that, and it's like a crit success, and they win the battle and save lives. Those breakout moments really bond the party, and so I try to implement those as much as I can when I have new players come in because I try to give them as many opportunities to have that. Yeah, you slash through and you just cleave this monster clean in half, and I really lay into it because those are the moments when the rest of the party's like, damn, remind me not to piss her off,
yeah,
and so that's what I try to do for my players because not only does it help them feel welcome into the group, but it also kind of bonds them to the point where they don't feel like an outsider right from the get-go.
yeah. No, I definitely agree. It's all about finding people who agree on the and can laugh on the same wavelength. And
Oh
I feel
yeah.
like that's something I know you've mentioned that you work really hard with, is trying to sort people into various campaigns where they'll mesh well with the other members.
Yeah, for sure, and that's half of it is being able to read your players. You don't have to know them like a book, but get to know them. Don't think of them as a source of income. Don't think of them as just another person you gotta prep for. They are first and foremost, every one of my players is my friend. I will do my best to talk to them, before session, after session. I try to show up early so that way I can talk and chat, ask people how their day went, and really try to just generally vibe with my players because it helps me build that relationship with them.
You're my friend now. We're having soft tacos later.
Yeah, basically. Oh, man. Well, regardless, that is all the time we have for this week's D&D podcast. Anything you want to plug? I know you've been working on some new stuff over there.
Yeah, I've actually started, it's still in the works, but I actually have started both a Patreon and a Fiverr. I'm trying to offer home brewing services based out of pop culture, media, so anime, video games, movies, TV shows, any sort of media that you find, and you see like a scene or an episode and you think, man, that would be really cool to be able to role play as, to be able to like immerse myself further into past watching somebody else do it, then I'm offering my services to be able to adapt that type of content into 5e playable content, whether it's encounters, classes, subclasses, even entire campaigns, maybe with a little help.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I feel like you've really hit a niche, and I'm very interested to see where that heads. Um,
Yeah.
but past that, obviously subscribe to Brock's YouTube channel, D&D Fight Club, and comment on some of the videos he's got. And if you're listening to this in any type of podcast form from any other site, follow or subscribe. I'm not really sure how all that works, but stay with us to see another session next week. And I think that's about it.
Yep. Remember to check out Gage's Start Playing Now account as well. There's always
Oh,
slots open for new campaigns.
oh my God, yeah, I totally forgot about that. Whoops, the one thing I was supposed to plug, I forgot. Either way, thanks for stopping by, guys. We'll see you next week.
Yep, take care.